Dr. David Harris was heading home after a medical conference in Chicago. The renowned cardiologist from Boston, known for his skills and compassion, was eager to return to his family. His wife, Marissa, and their 2 children, Ethan and Zoe, awaited him eagerly. At Logan International Airport in Boston, David walked with his usual confident demeanor, wearing a navy blue suit and carrying a leather briefcase filled with medical notes and articles. The airport bustled with activity, with hurried passengers and constant flight announcements. David stopped at a cafe to grab a coffee, seizing a rare moment of tranquility. Suddenly, a sharp scream pierced the air. A young woman, blonde and dressed in travel clothes, collapsed on the ground, seemingly lifeless. Panic quickly spread, and a curious crowd began to gather around her. David didn't hesitate. He rushed toward the woman, pushing people aside with a firm and calm voice. "Please, let me through. I'm a doctor." He knelt beside her, quickly checking her pulse and breathing. She was in cardiac arrest. David immediately began performing chest compressions, his hands working with precision and urgency. As David tried to save the woman's life, he felt a strong hand pull him back. A large, muscular man, with a look of distrust and anger, roughly pushed him away. "Step away from her. What are you doing?" "I'm a doctor. She's having a cardiac arrest and needs help right now." David tried to explain, keeping his cool. "I don't want to hear your excuses. Step back now," the man insisted, with the crowd murmuring in agreement. "He's doing something wrong. It must be dangerous. Who does he think he is?" David felt the familiar pain of racial prejudice. It was a battle he knew well but never got easier. He looked at the unconscious woman, knowing that every second was crucial. "Please, let me help her," he pleaded, looking directly at the man holding him back. It was at that moment that a familiar voice cut through the noise. "Dr. Harris? What's going on here?" It was Thomas Gray, one of his regular patients at Boston General Hospital. Thomas was a respected businessman in the city, and David had treated his heart condition for years. Thomas looked around, sensing the tension and distrust in people's faces. "Folks, please listen up. This man is Dr. David Harris, one of the top cardiologists at our hospital. He saved my life. Let him do his job." The crowd hesitated for a moment, but the authority in Thomas's voice and the respect he commanded began to dissipate the distrust. Reluctantly, people stepped back, allowing David to attend to the woman again. He resumed chest compressions, and after a few minutes, the woman began to show signs of recovery. The emergency medical team arrived shortly after, taking over her care. David, sweating and exhausted, received a grateful hug from Thomas. "Thank you, Thomas. You came at the right time," David said, breathing a sigh of relief. "No, Dr. Harris, thank you. You've always been there for us." "The least I could do was return the favor," Thomas replied, with a warm smile. Seeing that the young woman was now out of danger and receiving the necessary care, David continued on his way. When David arrived home, the tension of the incident still weighed heavily on his shoulders. Marissa, his wife, immediately sensed that something was wrong. "David, what happened?" she asked, concerned. David told her about what happened at the airport. Marissa listened attentively, her face reflecting a mix of anger and sadness. "It's so unfair. You were trying to help, and yet you were treated like a criminal." Ethan, their 15-year-old son, overheard the conversation and entered the room. "Dad, that's terrible. They didn't know who you were." David shook his head. "No, son, and that's the problem. Many people judge by appearance, not by character or actions." Zoe, their 12-year-old daughter, hugged her father. "I'm glad you're okay, Daddy. You're a hero to us." Marissa smiled. Despite the anger she felt, "We always knew that. And now, more people know it too." The family was saddened by the situation David went through, but they were proud of how he reacted and saved another life. Days later, David received a letter. It was from the woman he had saved at the airport. "Dr. Harris, my name is Emily Carter. I don't know how to thank you for saving my life. I was informed of what happened, and I'm deeply ashamed of how you were treated. My family and I are eternally grateful for what you did. We would like to meet you in person to express our gratitude." David was touched by the letter and accepted the invitation to meet Emily and her family. When he arrived at the Carter's house, he was warmly welcomed. Emily, still recovering, stood up to hug him. "Thank you, Dr. Harris. I'm alive because of you." Emily's parents, visibly moved, also expressed their gratitude. "Dr. Harris, we can't imagine what you went through at that airport, but we want you to know that we will always be grateful for your courage and compassion," Mr. Carter said, with tears in his eyes. Mrs. Carter added, "We're committed to doing our part to combat prejudice and ignorance. Your story has opened our eyes to the painful reality many face." The incident at the airport and the gratitude from the Carter family had a profound impact on David. He decided to use his experience to promote change. He began getting involved in community initiatives and giving lectures on equality and inclusion, aiming to educate and inspire others. At Boston General Hospital, David organized workshops focused on diversity and cultural sensitivity for the medical staff. He wanted to ensure that no other doctor or patient would go through what he experienced. His team and his patients fervently supported him, admiring his courage and determination. Thomas Gray, his patient who defended him at the airport, became a key partner in his efforts. Together, they worked to promote inclusion and equality policies in the hospital and the community. Time passed, but the memory of the airport incident remained with David, not as a wound, but as a catalyst for change. He continued to save lives and inspire others, always with the mission of building a fairer world. At a community event, David was honored for his contributions to medicine and his work for equality. In his speech, he talked about the importance of looking beyond appearances and judging people by their actions and character. "We all have a responsibility to create a world where every person is judged by their contributions, not by the color of their skin," he said. "As doctors, our mission is to save lives and promote human dignity. And as human beings, we must strive to overcome prejudice and discrimination, one step at a time." David's story began to spread beyond the walls of Boston General Hospital. Local and national journalists started reporting on the airport incident, highlighting not only David's courage and medical skill, but also the urgent need to combat racism and discrimination in society. The media brought attention to the importance of diversity and inclusion in the medical field. David was invited for interviews on television and radio programs, where he shared his experiences and his visions for a fairer and more equal healthcare system. "I'm not an exception," he said in one of these interviews. "There are many talented and dedicated doctors who face prejudice every day. We need to recognize and value everyone's contribution, regardless of their skin color. Only then can we build a truly inclusive and efficient healthcare system." David's words resonated with many people. He began receiving letters and emails from people across the country, thanking him for his courage and inspiring them to fight against prejudice in their own communities. At Boston General Hospital, David realized that his influence was spreading beyond the hospital corridors. Young doctors and medical students began to see him as a mentor and a role model. They came to him for advice, inspired by his determination and resilience. A young doctor, Dr. Emily Walker, a cardiology resident, approached David after one of his lectures at the hospital. "Dr. Harris, your story deeply touched me," she said. "I want to make a difference like you do. How can I help combat prejudice and promote equality in our field?" David smiled, seeing a spark in Emily's eyes. "Change starts with each of us," he replied. "Treat all your patients with the same dignity and respect. Be an example of compassion and competence, and use your voice to speak out against injustice whenever you encounter it. Together, we can make a real difference." David's story also strengthened bonds within the Boston community. He began working closely with community organizations and civil rights advocacy groups, seeking ways to educate and empower the local population. He organized workshops and seminars at the hospital, focusing on diversity, inclusion, and the importance of effective communication with patients from different cultural backgrounds. These events not only educated the hospital staff, but also helped build a more cohesive and empathetic community. Despite all the recognition and positive impact, David knew that the journey was far from over. He continued to face challenges and prejudices, but now with a stronger community by his side. And every time he saved a life, he felt he was one step closer to building the world he dreamed of. Dr. David Harris's story is a testimony to the power of compassion, courage, and determination. It is a reminder that even in the face of adversity, each of us has the ability to make a difference and fight for a fairer and more equal world. If you enjoyed the story, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. By liking our videos, you help us grow and reach more people, making our community even more vibrant and diverse.